How's it going, everyone? And welcome back to the Eternal Wrestling Podcast, where wrestling is eternal. I'm your host, Jacob, and on this episode, we're going to be talking about the January 14th edition of AEW Dynamite, Maximum Carnage. To start off the show, we had a backstage segment with Samoa Joe, and he calls out Hangman Adam Page, saying that he's foolish, but Joe has to prep to defend his trio's titles. He decided to put a bounty out against Hangman, and this is when the bounty hunter, Brian Keith, appears in frame, and Brian claims that he's changed since the last time that they've met, and he's going to make this match tonight very personal. Our opening contest is Darby Allin against Pac. Darby is seeking his first win against Pac here, as Pac has beat him 2 times prior. Pac enters through the crowd with the Death Riders, but he turns around and he tells them, "Hey, I've got this tonight. I'm going to finish this myself." And they return to the backstage area. So before the match can really even begin, Darby does a flying dive to the outside, crashing into Pac and sending him over the barricade before the bell can even ring. And then these two, they decide to start brawling throughout the crowd. And as they're brawling throughout the crowd, Darby climbs up onto like a second level and he hits a copping and drop on top of Pac. And then Pac is running from Darby back to the ringside area and kind of around the ring. He lures Darby into crashing into the barricade. He then grabs the steel steps and he positions them, and he gives Darby a belly-to-belly suplex. So Darby's back and ribs come crashing into these steel steps. He's just got to be hurting here. I don't know how Darby does these crazy spots in his matches and is able to walk afterwards. He's definitely going to need a nice bath. And then finally, after all this craziness happened, they both get back into the ring, the bell is rung, and the match is officially underway. Pac is being very brutal to Darby throughout this match, throwing him into barricades left and right, throwing him into the ring posts, and then he picks him up and throws him from the ring onto the entrance ramp. And then Pac does end up pulling the ref in front of Darby, and the ref gets knocked out because Darby accidentally hits the ref. And during this time frame, Darby, he gets this Scorpion Deathlock submission onto Pac, and out comes Wheeler Yuta with a chair because, of course, the Death Riders cannot fight a single match by themselves. Darby's able to take out Wheeler Yuta without much hesitation or fight, and then he gets the coffin drop. He does a Scorpion Death Drop in honor of Sting, and he puts Pac's ankle into a chair, climbs up onto the second turnbuckle, and hits a coffin drop there. Then he gets another Scorpion Death Lock on Pac, and Pac taps out. I'm glad Darby won here, but I was expecting a little bit more insanity in this match, because Darby's just usually that crash test dummy type of wrestler, being insane at times. Yet, it was nice to see him dial it back a little bit, and hopefully from here on out, Darby and the Death Riders do not cross paths for a while. Next up is Brian Keith, the bounty hunter, and he's accompanied by Big Bill. And this is a one-on-one match against Hangman Adam Page. And during the match, Swerve actually comes out to assist Hangman, and he's got a chain with him, and he actually chokes out Big Bill as Big Bill is trying to interfere in the match. This allows Hangman to hit a buckshot lariat clothesline and get the pinfall on Brian Keith. Well, it seems like he couldn't really get his bounty tonight, and even Hangman ends up saying after the match, "Go try to collect your bounty now, dumbass." He then says, "I'm going to take everything from you, Samoa Joe." And Swerve also has a mic, and he says, "MJF, if you come out of your title defense as a winner, we will be coming for you." And Swerve says, "It's about time that I was back on top of the mountain." But then comes Kenny Omega. He comes into the ring with a microphone, and he says, "It doesn't matter if you're friend or foe. I'm coming for that belt." And Hangman says that, "You know what, Kenny? If we do cross paths, may the best man win." And they shake hands. Nice to see a showing of respect between these two men. And heck, if you just put them in a 3-way match and get a number 1 contender, that'd be a heck of a match right there itself. So Hangman and Swerve exit the ring, and out comes Don Callis to talk some crap to Kenny Omega. Don Callis says that he's always been a big fan of MJF. He mentions, "Why don't you wrestle against Josh Alexander since you need to win some matches?" And Kenny says, "You know what? Sounds like you issued a challenge, and I've got some time tonight. What do you say, Josh?" But before Josh could really, get out what he wanted to say, Don quickly cut him off. He said, "You forget you do what Daddy says, and Daddy says you can face Josh next week." Like I was going to say, Josh just seemed ready to fight here, but Of course, Don Callis had to take everything into his hands, and we gotta wait for this matchup. We then get a backstage interview with Brody King. Renee Paquette is interviewing him here. In the translator from last week with MJF, he tries to come up to Brody King acting all tough, and he says, "Tell your masked partner not to lay hands on me or suplex me ever again." So Brody says, "How about I do that tonight?" And this turns into a match where Brody is fighting this man, and he is just in a suit and tie. Jonathan Cruz ends up losing the match because he's hit by a Gonzo bomb, and very easy work for Brody King here. After the match, he says, "Bandito, I want you to beat MJF's ass from pillar to post." So this was pretty comical, seeing Brody just put this man down like it was nothing. It doesn't do a lot for Brody because he just squashed the guy. It does make him look a bit dominant. Hey, added in comedy to a show is not bad. After this, we have a tag team #1 contender match where Don Callis family, Davis and Doyle versus Jet Speed versus the Gates of Agony versus the Young Bucks. And during the match, there was 4 people on top of each of the turnbuckles, the Young Bucks being one of the teams. And they jump off, and there's a big 4-way splash spot onto their opponents. And Davis and Doyle really show their power here during the match for being a tag team that was just thrown together. And I thought they worked really well together. Very cohesive. And of course, during the match, there's a portion where the Young Bucks deal out super kicks to everybody, and Ricochet decides to help his faction members, the Gates of Agony, and he pulls out the ref. And then Jack Perry comes flying out of the crowd and runs them off. In the closing moments of the match, Doyle, he is about to be on the receiving end of a Hurricane Rana by Mike Bailey, but Doyle is able to take control of the situation and powerbomb him to the outside, allowing Davis and Doyle to become your new #1 contenders. For the match, out comes tag team champions FTR, and Stokely is in a wheelchair here. They get into the ring and stare down Davis and Doyle, but Davis and Doyle smack the tag team championships out of their hands, and a brawl ensues where security has to come out and separate these 4 men. Next up is a female trios match where the team of Triangle of Madness, Tekla, Sky Blue, and Julia Hart are against the tag team champions Willow Nightingale and Harley Cameron, along with the women's world champion Chris Statlander. And I'm just really extremely surprised that the Triangle of Madness won here and that Tekla ended up getting the pin on Chris Statlander, as the Triangle of Madness have taken a lot of losses previously, and this was really refreshing to see them win, and even more crazy to see that Chris Statlander ate the pin here for her team. So this could be setting up a mini feud with Chris taking on Tekla for the women's championship down the line. They could build towards that if Tony Khan wants to. Then we get an interview with Jet Speed, and Swerve interrupts, and he's paying compliments to Jet Speed backstage, and then he leaves frame, and then out appears a fired up Hangman Adam Page saying that we should team together and we should take out that Ops for the World Trios titles. This was kind of funny here, just like they're trying to butter up the tag team of Jet Speed to take down the Ops. Just a funny little segment. Now it's main event time, where the World Championship is on the line as Bandito versus MJF. And Bandito, he comes out wearing a sci-fi-like Aztec armor, and this was reminiscent of Aztec Batman, which love me some Batman, huge Batman fan. So this was pretty cool to see, as DC also has a working relationship with AEW. So in typical MJF fashion, he plays mind games and he tries to slow down and control the pace of the match. And it was kind of funny that during this match, both men end up doing the Macarena to taunt each other. And MJF, he decides to leave the ring and crawl over the barricade to get away from Bandito, because Bandito's a high flyer and he was gaining advantage during this portion of the match. But Bandito climbs to the top rope. He's standing there for a minute and he just does a huge flying dive from this top rope over the barricade, taking down MJF into the crowd side area. It was really an incredible showing of athleticism and prowess here, that Bandito is willing to do whatever it takes to become champion during this match. Also, Bandito ends up hitting a shooting star press, but he still couldn't keep MJF down. The champ is still fighting. Eventually, he is able to hit his 21-plex finisher move, but he is so wore down that he can't do the pin that he needs to do. And throughout the match, MJF, he's been cranking on the left arm of Bandito, really working the shoulder and joints here, and he's trying to get Bandito to tap out, but Bandito just ends up flipping off MJF and telling him that he won't stop. But sadly, Bandito passes out from the pain inflicted to his shoulder, and MJF wins the match here. It was nice to see MJF not using any underhanded tactics, from what I recall, because he's usually always trying to cheat his way out of matches or make them end super quickly. Yet, after the match, MJF, he grabs a mic and says that Bandito's going to be a world champion one day, and that he really impressed him here. Then he says, "This is why I have to do this." And he gets up, grabs his belt, and starts attacking Bandito with the title, and he makes a motion like he's going to unmask him. Then outruns Brody King, and he's able to run off MJF. And that is your AEW Maximum Carnage Dynamite episode. I will say Brody King had me worried there when he came out. I thought he was going to attack Bandito, the way he was just kind of like looming over him. I will say my favorite match of this episode would have to probably be the main event here. It had lots of great athleticism, and Bandito really showed out. I just wanted a little bit more from the Pac and Darby match, just more insanity, since this would be the match that ends their rivalry, and Darby can finally leave the Death Riders in his taillights. It was a good match, and Darby didn't have too many crazy spots, so he can preserve his body and not be seriously injured. I thought this was a good Maximum Carnage episode. I just feel, though, as the women need some more time to shine on Dynamite. Because I noticed that on Collision, it seems like there's more women's matches, like tag team matches or just appearances by the women. I'd like to see some more of that get brought into Dynamite, so both the men and women are getting somewhat equal screen time, also depending on the storylines that unfold. Also, making headlines in the wrestling news is that Powerhouse Hobbs, his contract ended with AEW, and that he is expected to sign with WWE. So if this is true, I think that on the AEW Collision Maximum Carnage edition this Saturday, we could see the Ops lose the Trios titles, since Hobbs is part of the Trios champions. Or maybe something else is going to play here. I am not sure if the episode was recorded prior or not. I try to avoid spoilers as much as I can, but I'm kind of floored, though, to see Powerhouse Hobbs leave. He's had multiple championships. He seems to be featured quite a bit on TV here lately, but at the end of the day, he's been with AEW for a while, and maybe he just wants to explore his options with a different company, and that I can very much understand, as new companies can offer new opportunities, and he's just a big, meaty man with a great physique, so he could be pushed as a main eventer if he does go with WWE, and that's just the way they'd see things. Or they could put him in NXT and build him up and get him a new character going if that's what they want to do. As with always with AEW, the matches always deliver. I just hope that they are able to put Brody King into like a rivalry or something that is more worthy of his time instead of squash matches every week. That would be nice to see. And also, I hope that the Triangle of Madness keeps picking up some wins and gaining some momentum here. That, maybe the Sisters of Sin can challenge the women's tag team champions, Willow and Harley, and we could get some dynamic going there. I just thought it was interesting that Joe decided to put a bounty out on Hangman and have Brian Keith try to take him down, knowing Brian Keith's history, as he does tend to lose quite often. It would have been more interesting to see Big Bill take on Hangman, because he's like almost 7 foot tall. He's like a walking redwood tree. Well, everybody, thank you for tuning in, and that is going to wrap up this episode of the Eternal Wrestling Podcast. As always, I hope you have a wonderful day or night whenever you listen to this, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.